Thanks for staying with us here on The Real Story. Well, we might be past the primary election here in Connecticut, but the 2024 race to the White House is already at a sprint, but not without a legal shadow hanging over the former president and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. And now a legal challenge from Connecticut saying the Constitution disqualifies Trump after January 6th, and he should be barred from the ballot. Joining me now is civil rights lawyer Alex Taubes, who's joined together with the New Haven alder asking the Secretary of the State to take action on this. Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you've taken on this constitutional challenge asking the state of Connecticut to take Trump off the ballot and deem him ineligible for the 2024 presidential race. For people who don't know about this, tell me a little bit more and where this stands right now.
Thank you so much. So on January 6, 2021, instead of allowing for the peaceful transfer of power, Donald Trump participated in an insurrection and rebellion against the United States, as was concluded in the bipartisan report of the Select Committee on the events that occurred on January 6th. The reason why this is legally relevant is because in Article 14, Section 3 of the amendments to the U.S. Constitution, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, states that no person who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States may hold any office of the United States. And the Constitution says what it says. Donald Trump did what he did, and therefore Donald Trump is ineligible to run for the office of President of the United States. And we're asking our state election officials to enforce the Constitution.
And where does, this case stand right now?
Well, Stephanie Thomas, our Secretary of the State here in Connecticut, received our petition, me and Alderman Troy Streeter, on September 2nd. And under the law, they have 30 days to formulate a response to our petition and determine whether they're going to take action. We're seeing that in other states across the country, chief election officials are not taking action, and they're claiming that they don't have the ability to determine who is eligible for the ballot. We disagree with that, and we await the Secretary of the State's decision to see what action or no action she may take.
And you just brought up this happening in other states across the country. Every state can launch this legal challenge to Trump's candidacy if they so wish. Now, New Hampshire saying they would not do this just this week, obviously a major state when it comes to presidential primaries and influence. Could these legal challenges change or be stronger when Trump does actually go to trial rather than just being charged?
Well, none of the charges against Donald Trump in criminal court charge him with insurrection.
Right.
He's charged with many other criminal offenses, but it does not disqualify you from the ballot or from office simply to have criminal charges or convictions. It is only the specific act of insurrection. And Congress's bipartisan report, the Select Committee report, contains extensive and conclusive answers on whether and what Donald Trump did on January 6th. The evidence is clear, and in any type of evidentiary hearing, it can be established exactly what he did.
And we obviously see a lot of claims right now the justice system is being used as a political tactic or a ploy. Do you think it's important Donald Trump be held legally liable for January 6th and election interference, president candidate or not?
Nobody is above the law. And that doesn't matter whether you are a president or a former president or a candidate for president. If Donald Trump is above the law and the Constitution does not apply to him, then the Constitution does not apply to anyone, and it no longer has the force that it needs to protect us and protect our rights and liberties. So it is extremely important that Donald Trump stop using our legal system as a political tool, that he comply with the orders of courts and with the rules of our Constitution, and that our officials hold him accountable when he breaks those rules and ignores the Constitution.
And this past week here in Connecticut, a man mailed a petition with nearly 17,000 signatures to get Trump's federal trial on TV. He said, given how polarizing and consequential the trial is, Americans need to be able to see it for themselves, not just hear reports about it or see courtroom sketches. We do know Georgia's case will now be televised. Whether Trump is taken off Connecticut's ballot or not, do you think it's important for people to have access to these legal proceedings?
I believe that the federal court system, which has existed in our country for 250 years, can decide whether or not it is appropriate for there to be any recordings or videos of the proceedings. Again, Donald Trump is not above the law. He does not get an exception to the rules. If the courts believe that it is appropriate for the trial to be televised, then it will be televised. But he has no right to demand an exception to the rules that exist of procedure in our courts and in our laws. He does not have the right to turn a courtroom into a circus.
And bringing it more locally here, we just had the primaries this past week in Connecticut, and as of the taping of this episode, Derby will be conducting a recount in their Republican mayoral primary. Alderman Gino Giovanni is just slightly ahead for the nomination, just 10 votes. So he's also currently being charged with breaching the Capitol on January 6th, pleading not guilty, but admitting to being there. Would this constitutional challenge and disqualification apply to Giovanni's campaign as well?
It depends on what Giovanni did. The select committee of the House of Representatives and its bipartisan report was about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump did.
Right.
We don't know exactly what Gino Giovanni did. However, given that he admits that he was present on January 6, 2021, I believe the Secretary of the State should hold a hearing. And if he wants to contend that he's not guilty of insurrection, he can present that evidence in an administrative hearing. Now, we've had ballot challenges in Connecticut in the past where people have put forward evidence. When current Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysiewicz ran for Attorney General in 2010, it came forward through evidence that she had not paid certain fines and fees to be an attorney every year as required by the bar. Because of that, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled that she was constitutionally or statutorily ineligible to run for the office of Attorney General, and she was disqualified from the ballot. Again, Donald Trump or Gino Giovanni, the rules apply to them just as much as they applied to Susan Bysiewicz when the Republican Party sued to get her off of the ballot. The rules apply to both parties, and now accountability needs to take place.
And Alex, would you say this is unprecedented legally? Did you ever imagine you'd be taking on a case like this to disqualify a former president from election, as you say, for, quote, lighting the fire of an insurrection?
I do not believe it is unprecedented. In the last election cycle, there were multiple hearings held to determine whether certain candidates were eligible to run for offices of the United States based upon the actions that occurred on January 6, 2021. In Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene testified for over 3 hours in an administrative hearing about whether she had engaged in insurrection on January 6th, with a Georgia judge determining she had not engaged in insurrection. Madison Cawthorn in North Carolina also faced a case regarding his actions on January 6th. Because he lost the Republican primary, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Virginia determined that Mr. Cawthorn's case was moot. But the case stands as a precedent that the 14th Amendment, Section 3, has meaning and importance in our society 150 years after it was ratified in the wake of the Civil War.
Well, Alex, that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Definitely an interesting case, and we'll be watching to see how this plays out. Well, that does it for us here on The Real Story. But if you do want to watch these segments again, you can head to fox61.com or download the free Fox 61 app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61 or streaming on Fox 61 Plus. Have a great morning.